Motoring 2010 on TSN is brought to you by Quaker State, Real Durable Oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.
This week we're on board one of the many ferries that ply the waterways off the coast of British Columbia. We just left Vancouver. We're heading north to what is called the Sunshine Coast, and hopefully we will get some sunshine. And you know, the last time we were on board one of these babies, they invited us into the engine room. It was very cool. And speaking of cool, Nissan is bringing out a new vehicle they hope that we all think is cool. And they say it represents a new segment. Great, just what we need, another segment. However, it's a crossover, and although Nissan already has the Rogue and the Murano, they're telling us this new vehicle lives in a space of its own, and they're calling it the Juke.
It's no surprise that the small SUV segment, small crossover segment in Canada is a very large one. That leaves some real opportunities for us to add a new flavor to the marketplace, and Juke really does that. This one's an all-new nameplate for the Nissan lineup. It's got a lot of all-new innovations in it. Things like the new 1.6-liter direct injection turbo engine, things like the torque vectoring all-wheel drive system that are both new additions to the Juke for 2011.
Basically, what they seem to be saying is they've taken the Nissan Cube platform, which has been successful for the female market, and they've designed a vehicle around that, the Nissan Juke, specifically for the male market. And what that market means is, I guess they don't want to drive a box on wheels. They want something with a little bit of style, something a little bit more robust and rugged, and that's what they're trying to do with the Juke.
The design, I guess, will be polarizing, that's for sure. The front looks a little bit like, bug-eyed, kind of tree frog kind of look. It's definitely kind of quirky. Then again, I think that the designers are sort of like, they're always looking for ways to stand out in the marketplace, and this vehicle definitely will stand out. There's no doubt about that.
This is a vehicle that's the living, breathing iteration of what was shown in Geneva in 2009 as the Kazana concept car. Very well received in both Japan and in Europe, so there's a lot of interest around the world in this particular vehicle, and we're hoping to show that there's the same kind of level of interest in Canada.
You know, it's probably just automotive gobbledygook, but Nissan is telling us that this Juke does not have any competition. Give me a break. It's small, it's quirky looking, it's good on fuel, it's cheap, lots of cars on the market. So my question is, what gives?
We think that we've got a vehicle that, for example, in the case of the 100 horsepower per liter club, is almost $8,000 to $10,000 cheaper than the closest thing that's in the marketplace. So that's one criteria. We've done, I think, a very good job with the design, both inside and outside on the vehicle. There's nothing that looks like it from the rear, except in cars that maybe are $20,000 more expensive. The fit and finish on the inside, there's a whole youthful aspect to this thing that we think is going to appeal to Gen X buyers, but also more specifically to this eco boomer target audience. That's going to be a very, very big portion of the Canadian car buying business in the future.
Well, I think they're trying to split the pie into, ever narrower pieces. The segmentation is getting a little bit crazy. I guess it's good for the consumer because then, you do have more choice in terms of what you're looking for in terms of a vehicle. But it can get a little bit confusing perhaps for the consumer as well. You have to do your research, and you really have to know, what you're looking for and what you want to get in a vehicle before you start shopping, I guess.
The Nissan Juke comes with both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, but this all-wheel drive comes with something called torque vectoring. Here's the scoop.
Torque vectoring all-wheel drive system is again a new addition to Nissan. It's an $1,800 option that's available off the Juke. Torque vectoring essentially allows us to shift the torque from a front drive situation at 100% to 50-50 front to rear, but it also has the additional benefit of being able to shift between the rear sides of the vehicle.
The torque vectoring system on the all-wheel drive really does work and makes a big difference on the car. When you're going into a corner at a fairly high rate of speed, you turn in initially, and then you realize maybe you've turned in a little bit too much because you're sort of like anticipating some understeer that's going to build up, but the understeer never quite materializes because the outside rear wheel picks up just, there's more torque that's vectored to that wheel, so the car turns in really nicely. Dynamically, it's pretty impressive. The horsepower is good, the power-to-weight ratio is good, the engine with the gasoline direct injection responds really well. We've driven also the all-wheel drive with the CVT. Now, I'm not a big fan of the CVT transmissions. This one seems to be doing an okay job.
Spent more time in the manual transmission. I was very impressed with the shift mechanism, how that worked. The power of the 188 horsepower turbo engine is very good, especially on the mountain roads.
It's nice to see that some of these cars are making it over to North America or being adapted for North America. And, I think cars like the Ford Fiesta and the Mazda 2, they're small, efficient cars, but they have, they have a bit of style to them, and that's, I think, what the consumer is looking for.
More later on Kenzie's Corner.
The name's familiar, but that's where all and any similarities end, because this is not your granddad's Buick. On this edition of Test Drive, the all-new Buick Regal. The latest car to wear the Regal badge is about as far removed from Buicks of just a couple of years ago as it's possible to get without swapping brands, and I don't mean within GM. This Regal shines in the manner in which it straightens a twisty road, and it does so while delivering remarkable comfort given the sportier overtones. There is very little body roll, understeer's a long way out, and the feel and feedback afforded by the steering is both poised and predictable. These likeable traits and the large tyres combine to give the driver a true sense of what's happening at the road-to-rubber interface. Now that's a 180-degree departure from the previous float-on-air vagueness that was Buick. The interior of this Buick Regal is about as far removed from GM's previous interiors as it's possible to get. To begin with, very, very nice materials of the soft touch variety. It also comes loaded if you go with the top of the line CXL. In this case, great Harman Kardon audio system, a navigation system, and a power moonroof to go along with all of the other power toys. There is, however, one thing that's conspicuous by its absence. Now, whilst the sight lines to the back of this Regal are pretty good, which means it's not a mandatory piece of equipment, if you're going to load a car up, you should go whole hog, and that would include a backup camera. The Regal uses GM's 2.4-litre Ecotec engine. It's a state-of-the-art direct-injected 4 that produces 182 horsepower and 172 pound-feet of torque at 4,900 RPM. Now let's get one thing straight. Nobody is going to be bowled over by the motivation this engine delivers. However, it is more than adequate for just about any eventuality except drag racing. Tromp the gas and the Regal runs to 100k in 8.6 seconds, which is faster than the likes of the Toyota Camry by almost a second, and the Honda Accord when they're both equipped with a 4-cylinder engine. For the vast majority of drivers, this base powertrain is going to be more than enough horsepower. However, if you want more, it's available, and it comes in the form of a 2-litre turbocharged 4. It ups the horsepower count to 220, but more importantly, it brings 258 pound-feet of torque, anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 RPM. It really does make a big difference, especially as the air is blown into the engine at up to 20 psi. There's no turbo lag, which brings much, much better performance. Part of the reason the Regal feels alive is its 6-speed manumatic transmission. The first 5 gears are such that the engine stays in the heart of the power band as the Regal is accelerated to speed. Once cruising, 6th gear looks after the fuel economy and keeps the engine noise at a discrete level. The combination works very nicely. A week-long fuel average of 10.1 litres per 100 kilometres speaks volumes. There's also a manual gate, although it saw seldom use because the box is best left to its own devices. The back half of this Buick Regal has been equally well thought through. To begin with, there's decent legroom, plenty of headroom and enough width to carry 2 people in comfort. At the back end, you've got a nice large opening for the trunk, 14.2 cubic feet of cargo space and 60/40 split folding rear seats, which extends the length of the trunk. I also like the fact these hinges have been boxed in. Talk safety, and the Regal has the lot. A very advanced traction and stability control system, up to 8 airbags and strong anti-lock brakes. The latter deliver short 40-metre stops from 100k, which is very good by class standards and nothing short of remarkable for a Buick. There's 2 things that come through loud and clear with this new Buick Regal. First of all, the execution, especially the cabin, is first rate. The second thing, its European heritage shines through. In base form, it's got decent power and good handling. If you ramp up to the 2-litre turbo, much better performance and even better handling. The bottom line, this Regal can run with any of its key competitors.
My oldest boy came up with the idea of building a full-size truck with a couple of jet engines on it, and as you can tell, it ended up with 3. Like everything I do, I overdo.
Mom, Dad, I always wanted to fly. I'm signing away my life.
Well, good luck, man.
See you, Dad. It's been nice, okay?
Any last infamous words of wisdom?
I think I left you that camera in my will, but...
Well,
unbelievable. Unbelievable. He said it was going 3 times as fast as an F-15. It was just, my stomach was up about here, right in my throat. And before it, I'm thinking, I always say the older I get, the less chances I want to take. Here I am sitting in a jet-powered truck with a guy I don't know, and it's all over, and I just signed my life away. It was fantastic, and now I know why these guys love doing what they do. It was what a rush. It was the ultimate. The ultimate.
Make sure you check out the Motoring website at motoringtv.com. You can watch any program you may have missed. In fact, how about a trip down memory lane and see what we were driving as far back as 1988. Check out our blog, our photo gallery, and much more. It's all there at motoringtv.com.
It may not be politically correct in some circles, but the fact remains that we're going to have internal combustion cars around for a long time, and why not make one that's actually fun to use? And this is exactly what it is, a fun car to drive.
You know, the console in the Nissan Juke was actually inspired by the motorcycle, that high part being the fuel tank, and of course it slopes down to where you would sit, but I would not advise you doing that. From the exterior point, well, it's the old head-turning test, and lots of people were checking out this vehicle as we drove it around the roads in British Columbia. And also with those big hips front and back, this Juke has a lot of resemblance to the rest of the Nissan family. All right, now let's head to the Quaker State Garage. Join Bill Gardner.
You know, when you buy a brand new vehicle, performance is right at its peak, right out of the factory. But as the vehicle gets older and it gets some miles on it, gets some kilometers on it, it slowly slides downhill in terms of fuel economy, performance, and emissions. It's not what it used to be. We've all experienced that with our high mileage cars. And eventually you can get into a performance problem with your vehicle where maybe it doesn't pass an emission test, maybe it's got a rough idle, maybe the fuel economy is only half what it used to be or significantly worse than it used to be. Maybe it's got a rough idle, or maybe all of the above. And at that stage of the game, quite often what you've got to do to rectify it is take the vehicle into your mechanic, do a tune-up on it, but often do a fuel system cleaning where they clean the fuel injectors, restore the spray pattern of the injectors, and purge the engine of carbon. Now, it's a fairly expensive operation. It could be $100, $150 or more depending on what you've got to do. It's risky. There's a fire hazard element to it because you're working on a fuel system with a lot of pressure in it, and it's certainly not something that a do-it-yourselfer can do. But a much better approach is for you as a motorist to buy off-the-shelf products like these that you introduce to the fuel system. You basically just put them in the fuel tank periodically when you're filling up the tank at the pumps. Take the lid off, tear off the little protective cap, put this in your tank, and then fill the tank to the top and run that tank right to the bottom. Don't fuel up half or quarter or 3/4 of the way through. Run that tank as close as you dare to the bottom, and then you've slowly cleaned that fuel system. You've done basically what we would have done in the shop for $100, $150. You've done it for $6 or $8. Do it periodically, do it at regular intervals, and you'll keep that vehicle at a nice level peak performance rather than letting it slowly slide downhill and then trying to bring it back with a lot of money and a lot of effort. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2010.
It's estimated that 1.2 million people are killed in road traffic accidents each year. And looking at it from that perspective, you can say that, well, road traffic safety is not really a problem. It's much, much more than that. It's an epidemic. So of course we need to address that. And knowledge is really the key here. And that's really what this center is all about, building knowledge to try to prevent this in the future.
This place is where the car-to-car impact takes place. We have one moving car traveling in that track, and another car which can travel from this tunnel, and this tunnel can be moved in direction all the way back here. Because in the real world, any crash can occur. So you can have an impact in any angle, and this facility makes this possible.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The track here is reversible, so we can shoot cars both into the building and we can shoot cars out of the building. So behind me here you see the gate, and on the outside there we can actually build different traffic scenarios from real life. Well, if we look at the past 10 years, we've been taking humble steps every day in building our knowledge, and that will continue over the coming 10 years. And I will think that we will see some breakthrough technologies being put to the market, both when it comes to how we can protect when a crash occurs, but more importantly, how we can prevent crashes from occurring in the first place. So hopefully, in a few decades even further, this center will be obsolete.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2010 is brought to you by the most fuel-efficient crossover on the highway, the all-new Chevy Equinox.
Now, Brad opened the show on the ferry boat heading out of Vancouver in the pouring rain, but of course now it's beautiful and sunny out because I'm on television. Now we're here for the Nissan Juke introduction. Now that's Juke, not junk or joke, Juke. And it occurred to me as we're driving this vehicle that the barriers of segments, they're getting so narrow and they're getting so close together. I wonder how the market ever figures this stuff out. I mean, just consider Nissan alone. They've got the Versa hatchback, they've got the Cube, truth in advertising there. They now got the Juke, and all three of those, by the way, are on the same platform. And then, not too big a step up, you've got the Nissan Rogue, which is probably closer to an SUV, but maybe it's a crossover, or maybe it's a face it, they're all station wagons. We just can't call them that. And I sometimes wonder, do they really need that much variability? Well, the marketing guys say that each of those vehicles is aimed at a different demographic slice. You've got the Digerati over here, and you've got the Echo Boomers over there, and you've got, I don't know, the Gen X guy over here, and the Gen Y, and the Gen who knows. Sometimes I think, you know, they're really overanalyzing this stuff. People buy cars because they're practical, they fit their needs, they enjoy driving them, they like the way they look. I mean, there's an awful lot of mumbo-jumbo going on here. And consider, for example, the Honda Element. Now, they spent billions of dollars developing this car, and it was supposed to be aimed at young people. Yeah, but it was so expensive, young people couldn't afford it, and the only people you ever see driving Honda Elements are 50-year-old guys with bags of peat moss in the back for their gardens. Hardly a marketing success from that perspective. But you know, there is one rule in the automobile marketing business that everybody has to pay attention to. It was originally espoused by Alfred P. Sloan Jr., who was the president of General Motors way back in the 20s. And he said, and I hope you get this right, you can sell a young man's car to an old man, but you can't sell an old man's car to a young man. I'm Jim Kenzie, and I'm an old man.
Okay, so how did I enjoy my day behind the Nissan Juke? Well, it started out kind of slow. You see, I got behind the wheel of the all-wheel drive with the CVT transmission. Really nice car, more than adequate, not very exciting. Although Nissan says they'll probably sell about 75% of these vehicles with the automatic, which I don't get, because I got behind the 6-speed manual front-wheel drive later in the day. I'm telling you, along with increased performance, you got that sporty interior. I had a blast. As for the exterior styling, well, it's nice to see car companies like Nissan who are finally putting an edge to the styling of these small cars. For so many years, car companies tried to be something to everybody, and we ended up with bland. But you know, I get the feeling Nissan probably doesn't care what I have to think about the Juke, and here's the reason. This car's target is, and you're ready for this, a growing, young, hyper-connected urban eco-boomer. Whatever that is. Before we go, make sure you check out our blog dogs on motoringtv.com. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
This latest Sportage really does raise the bar in the entry-level crossover segment. To begin with, it has a truly advanced electronic stability control system that actually uses the front wheels to counter oversteer, and it just goes to show you what a few years and some solid engineering will do for any vehicle.
Motoring 2010 on TSN has been brought to you by Quaker State, real durable oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.